Whether you're just getting started or if you're a seasoned veteran, Huddle makes it easy to use video and stats to help your team improve by focusing on what matters most. We'll show you how. Getting video online is simple. You can upload games and practices as you record in the Huddle, or use the camera you know and love to upload later. Regardless of how it's captured, your coaches and players will have immediate access from any device. Adding stats makes mindlessly scrubbing through that video a thing of the past. If everyone is struggling with boxing out, apply filters to quickly create a playlist for the team to review. You can also narrow it down to each player's highs and lows, share one-on-one. Add comments and drawings to help them see exactly what needs to improve. Reports bring your team's stats to life. Break down every game or any combination of games to analyze team and individual performance. Interact with the shot chart to see who does well from specific zones, or check the trends report to visualize progress over the course of the season. The best part, every number is linked directly to video so you can see the stats in action. How stats are tracked is totally up to you. Use an iPhone or iPad to track stats live or later as you rewatch the game. You can also send the video to Huddle Assist and let our professional analysts break it down in under 24 hours. Athletes can create highlights of their best moments to share with fans and recruiters. Huddle even has built-in messaging tools to keep everyone in touch between practices and seasons. It's all designed to help your team improve in less time than ever before. Start your free trial today.
All right, guys, welcome to session 4. Very, very excited to have with us 2 amazing presenters, 2 very, very experienced players in their own right and starting their coaching journeys themselves. So we will have Suzanne Maguire, Hall of Famer with Fordham University in the A10, 3-3 European Championship player, first team to do it. Got there ahead of our boys. Also played in the Irish Super League with DCU Mercy, and is currently a member of our international EPC committee. So I'm thrilled that she's going to be talking about the position of the forward this evening. And then we follow up with Why Not Me owner and current Templeogue point guard as well. Number of titles to his name, been around the league with a few teams, Ballina, a few others. So his experience and how he handles that position is going to be vital for us this evening. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Suzanne Maguire.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, that's great. Let me just get my screen up. Sorry, let me just open what we need to look at.
Yep.
And there, it's in there. Okay, brilliant. So thanks a million for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. And it's been a fantastic week. So and I suppose towards the end of this, you'll see how I'll wrap some of the ideas and the notes from our previous presenters, because it's all vital and all really does wrap together. So I'm going to look at playing in the post, and just going to kick off what we'll be discussing today. So a few starting points, just to get us all kind of on the same page. I'll talk a little bit about the physiological attributes. So for this position, the things and the key things that I believe are most important for a player to have. We'll look at some of the position specific, so mainly offense and defense, and then post. So we'll go into some of the coaching elements and ways by which the hows of how we instill this in these players. So just so we're on the same page, the intro, and this is it. So what I would normally do is, in a presentation, get you all to stand up and dance and shake it off. But the reason for having this is not that I'm Taylor Swift's massive fan. But it's more that I want in your mind for you to shake off the idea you have about a post player or the post position. The ideas that you have in your head right now of what such a player or positional player looks like, or what you believe their attributes should be. And from that, then I can, bring you through, I suppose, the ideas I have in my mind, or the things that I believe are most important. But it's important that for you as coaches or as players or whoever's tuning in, that you come to this with a bit of an open mind, because it may be different than what you think. You may have things that will challenge my thinking, and all of that is fair game. But to start, I just want you to shake that off a little bit and just come with an open mind to what I believe are some of the key things. So from a starting position, so I kind of want to go into playing the post position versus post players. Okay, so this is really to let go of that more traditional understanding of what a post player is and what they look like, and probably consider more the modern post positions and the skills that would bring advantages to both player and team. So by that I mean, traditionally we've known spots on the floor where you have post players play, and that's generally in the low post, kind of high post, elbows, and somewhere in the key. I now want to expand that and say that this position is more than that. This position needs to go and move to short corner, needs to extend to the 3-point line, and needs to trail in that position. And really, it's not just the on the block corner, on the block, low block. It is the whole middle position of the key. And again, I'll talk a lot more about finding space and angles, but it's not rooted to positions. It's not rooted to specific places on the floor. It has a level of, I suppose, the ability to find its place, and for a player to find what works best for them. So again, just to consider that the post position versus the post player, I want to talk about the position. And I want to talk about the type of player that you need to build to play that position. The positionless players, I know last night that at the end of the broadcast, I know Paul mentioned that, and again, there's a lot of debate and lots of conversation about this. I'm not talking about positionless players, but what I will say is that there are principles that hugely benefit development of this and these positional players. And lastly, not really as well on my story, but what I did want to say is that there was a critical, I started my career probably playing the post, and I'm ending it, or certainly in the twilight or in the dark ages of finishing playing basketball. And they both started and ended as a post positional player. But the in-between part, I was, the majority of my career, I wasn't. And that's where I got the most opportunity to be successful. It's also what enabled me to keep on developing my skills and to be able to play a lot longer and in different spots on the floor. And why I say the role of my coach was the root of that, because, not to go over in huge detail, but I had a decision point when I was about 15 of clubs that I would play with. And in one club, the coach I knew would have me rebound the basketball, outlet the basketball, don't dribble the basketball, run the other end of the floor, and assume some of those traditional post positions and basically confine my play to there. Whereas I ended up going to Talca Rovers, traveling right across the city, most weekends, 2 buses. It was a long time ago. And that the first time I entered that gym in Talca, the coach said to me, "You will play the point position. You will learn to dribble the basketball. You will learn to shoot the basketball. You will play all positions on the floor." And I don't think I would have had an opportunity to do what I've been able to do without the coach saying that to me, providing that opportunity to me. So really, my point here is that your role as a coach is very important for the future of your players that you have right now. So you always need to have an open mind, and you always need to be considering what's best for them in the long term. So yeah, just wanted to kind of start it off there. We'll go head to toe, in the physiological things that I think are most important in this position. You can see on the right side, probably not the post player you're all expecting, but there she is. So we'll start from the head. So the attributes that I think are most important here, we talk a lot about vision, and really because a lot of the movement in the position that we're talking about is not facing the basket. A lot of the movement can be towards the basketball, but with majority or behind you, so you don't have the sight of what's around you. So developing that on the offensive end is clear, On the defensive end, it's probably quite the opposite. You have probably the most vision on the floor. You probably see the more than anybody else can. So again, having that heightened sense of awareness because of your floor position is contributing on two ends of the floor. So developing your vision is fundamental, I think, is key here. Spacing, my space finding and taking it, again, the amount of room that you have to play within is small. Okay, so you have to be able to find the space there without, on the offensive end, without taking it away from your offensive players. Conversely, on the defensive end, you need to be taking that space away from who you're guarding. And that's where this idea of angles come in. So important that cuts and movements aren't so linear, or aren't so much so that you are completely blindsided, but using angles on the floor, cutting into space, cutting with a body shape that's not, you know, necessarily facing the ball or necessarily facing the player who's passing it, but being able to find an angle by which you root your back towards sideline, baseline, opens up your eyes to be able to see maybe the next activity that needs to happen. So spacing, again, finding it along your vision, you know, start to now layer up and start building up this position. And I have in there deception, probably one of the most underutilized attributes in basketball, and probably the most effective. And deception comes in many forms, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that from a point guard's perspective. But certainly, the closer you are to the basket, the more you're going, the harder it's offensively effective. More so because defense, you're closer in, you're going to have bodies around you collapsing. Lots of things happen when the ball is that close to the basket. Defense, they become more heightened and more aware. So you have to be able to navigate that. And by navigating, you need to be able to use a series of eye fakes, head fakes, body fakes. You got to be able to move in a certain way that releases pressure. So deception, or your ability to be able to, I suppose, use those other traits and those other attributes that you have, are important to developing this player in the spots that you're going to be playing. If we move on to the midsection, so from a body point of view, what are we looking at? Fundamentally in there, obviously, you know, you think about it as strong hands, because again, I'm not saying there's not a post player. I'm looking at the positions that you're moving around, and it's important that strong hands are going, you know, are able to catch the basketball. You know, you're going to have contact. Again, your proximity on the floor and where you are to the basket, certainly on that offensive end, is going to create that. And the next one is, this is something that I certainly developed as I matured as a player, and love it now. But it's very hard, I think, for younger players to enjoy the element of passing and passing the basketball and assists. But this player almost should be one of your top passers on the floor. I know when we were at the with the Europeans, with the under 18s, I was the assistant coach 2 years ago, and in one of the games we ended up putting a guard into a post position, and simply because she was able to pass the ball much better, you know, on that day, in that environment, on that, you know, and again, no disrespect to who we had there, but on that particular moment, that was the best option for us to get what we needed. And because getting the ball into those positions causes defenses to change and to move a lot, and being able to pass the ball effectively is so key for this. Strength, you know, the strength element is not about bulk and size. It really is about the preparation and the understanding. It's going to get physical in there. And yes, there has to be a strength of body, but equally so much so a strength of mind that matches that. And you really have a reduced margin for error. You know, you are the closest, certainly again on the defensive end, you are the closest person to the basket, probably. You know, again, looking at traditional post positions, you may not be if you have a team that's playing in the spaces that I want to talk about, which is maybe in the short corner, extended out into the 3-point line. You may not be, but playing against teams that likely, and the majority likely do have post players playing in those traditional places, there's no one behind you going to help you. So you really have a reduced margin for error. So your strength, and again, that's a strength of physicality and a strength of resolve, is key. And I have it there shooting, and I believe it 100%. It's all the way to the 3-point line. And they're, you know, I don't ever think we should deny players the ability to develop a three-point shot, develop any skills. You know, I suppose that's at the root of what I'm trying to say here, is that, you know, playing in a post position does not mean that you're limited to how you're developed or what you developed. And fundamental, I know for me, and what I was able to achieve and the opportunity I was able to give was because I was a 6 foot able to shoot the three-point shot. And I think it's key for that modern post position and the game that we have now. You know, with Carl talking last night about your 5-out offense, you want to be able to run whatever you want to run by having players who are fully developed to play in all spots. And it goes both ways. It's also about your guards being able to get into those post positions and able to execute. But this for me is a no-brainer. You absolutely have to develop that three-point shot. And last but not least is the feet, you know, so balance. And again, not just talking about balance, you know, about not being pushed around, and obviously that's part of it too, but I think you see imbalance being manifested in this sense. So I think you see it in the feet, you see people kind of, you know, get bumped over or stumble or, you know, catch the ball and are easily, you know, not low enough or not showing strength. But I find that shows a bit more of a larger imbalance within the player, but it manifests here, and it's important that this player is balanced. Has that within, you know, physically with the strength, feet, be able to catch the ball low, receive, take contact, you know, give contact. But I'd watch for this in these particular players too, because, you know, I feel that the players and the positions, sometimes they have a hard time getting, you know, getting the fun stuff in basketball. They're asked to do an awful lot of the work, probably traditionally an awful lot of rebounding or doing some of that grunt work. But then the offensive end, you know, on the nice end, on the end where the glory comes, they have a hard time kind of getting their hands on the basketball sometimes. I'm sure Puff will tell you all about how he feeds the post all the time. But it's important that you watch for this and you develop that sense of balance. But again, that's really kind of a all the way through to that mindfulness piece. Footwork, you know, coordinated agility, quickness. And again, it's I don't want this sense that this player or these positions are your slowest players, or that it's okay for these players not to be as quick or as agile. They fundamentally have to be. If not, they have a different sense of agility and quickness, but they really also need to have it. They have less space to operate in. So they really have to be timely and quite agile. And the bottom one, you know, it's a simple thing. And you know, when I say some of this stuff, it's not about, there's no evolution. It's not me saying you play off 2 feet, so therefore there's no place for the Euro step, or there's no place for the layup or those kind of things. And that's not what I'm saying. I spent probably most of my European saying this to my players and trying to get them to play off 2 feet. And really what that was when you get positioned inside, you know, establishing that balance, establishing that strength, and making a move to beat your defender proved to be more successful than a lot of players who, and I think it starts from a very young age, where you learn, you know, you learn to do a layup, everyone comes down the key and goes 1, 2, and every time that's the option that's taken. And the moment you go 1, it is very difficult to change the course that you're on, and if anything, you get pushed further away. The Euro step and such moves, completely effective, but they come from a rootedness in fundamentals, and I think this is a key fundamental. I don't think we mandate enough as coaches. I see it constantly with players that, you know, the preferred option is to go 1, 2, even if it means going 1, 2 through you, you know, which you can't physically do. So again, this would be one of the key things for me, is that playing off 2 feet. For specific things, so offensively and defensively, for me, you know, time, yeah, kind of, you know, back to and I think Erin mentioned it in her presentation when she was speaking about it's better to be, you know, slightly late than early. And I think what that sometimes can manifest or can indicate is where you have people who are moving because they want to beat their defender, and by that I mean get there quicker, right? So you don't wait for screens, or you move really early, or when you catch the ball you just go because you think you're going to outrun them or get to that particular place quicker, where that's not always the effective thing. It's, you got to beat them. I mean, you got to decide what's the best means by which you have to beat this person, and it means taking time, it means slowing down, it means waiting for the screen, It means deciding which is the way to go. It means catching the ball and understanding, using the vision that you have, using the footwork that you've developed, using the skill set that you've built up to then decide what's the best way to get out of this position. There are times, absolutely, when you will get there first and you should go quickly. But I find that that's less of the coaching part of it is around doing that. It's more about trying to get these positional players to slow down. And it's a big thing. And I think most coaches will probably say that a lot of their players in these positions are quite sped up. Moves, for me offensively, it's you need to perfect. You have to become, and it was something I remember Mark Ingle used to say. You have to have these 2 or 3 automatics, the things that you go to, things that you don't even have to think about, because all you need to do is you spend time looking at what your defender is doing, and you have the automatic moves to be able to do what you need to do. And that's important, because you then need to develop how you counter that when people figure out what you're doing. So you have to have those finishing moves, 2 hands equally, and have them down. The reverse pivot and that extended kind of reverse pivot, that stepping out, that using the stepping up with your outside foot, as I would say to the girls, like, the one closest probably to the sideline, and then, facing up to the basket with a reverse pivot. Great for getting space. I find that a lot of players in these positions tend to catch the basketball and turn it into the defense without being aware of how to create some space and generate moves that way. So footwork important, we spoke about that, but really the reverse pivot and generating space both sides of the floor, key, and really good too if you're cutting at correct angles, and angles where it's that kind of step is not a full kind of 90 degree, but is a little bit shorter because of how you're moving into the pass. And decision making, and again, another one of these things, and linked to my point before, where younger people, certainly younger girls I've coached, like, doing the same thing and really trying the same move. And at times, whether the defender is behind you, beside you, or in front of you, trying to do the same thing. There's a time and a place, for going quick. There's a time and a place where you have to go off 2 feet and beat someone. Time and a place where you have to pull up and be able to shoot. And again, that's built into that, the types of fundamentals and the type of basketball player that you need to be. The passing element too, passing out throw, passing to the better option. You develop, I suppose, a culture within your team where, there's not a sense that being in a post position is going to limit your touches. Then you'll have people who will freely give the basketball and start to enjoy that part of the game, hopefully. But I know I certainly did. On the defensive end, and again, releasing contact. Big things for me is I find, you're, in those posts, certainly in those low post positions, or even high ones, the ones where you're very close to the basket, as soon as your offensive player has caught it, it's the sense of being so close to them that really that's an offensive advantage for you. Again, with under 18 Irish team, a lot around releasing contact, a lot around not stepping away, but not allowing the offense to feel that contact, because once you do, there are easier moves and you are easily beaten. So releasing contact, allowing the player, putting the advantage back towards you, rather than on the offensive end. Hands, that on that hand positioning, hand activity, again, not down low, but keeping your hands up here a little bit more, because there's less space between here and here to get them up than them down and being very low. And then fundamentals, and again, lots of this stuff that I speak about are things that I know from coaching, younger age groups, up until under 18 Irish teams. Lots of these fundamental things are things that you would still be trying to coach through them. Root to ground, staying down. Yeah, it takes time to develop those anticipation skills where when someone's going up, rather than falling for head fakes or falling for those deceptive moves that you get in better players. So really being strong, low, staying down, and using strong fundamentals. And then again, you build and you layer your skill set on top of that. So just, when it comes to kind of coaching in the position, just to kind of wrap it up a little bit on, and what I wanted to do here was talk about some of the hows. So really this week there was some of the some of the coaching, other coaches who were talking about various different things, are elements that I would believe are important. So I want to touch back on those, and just some additional thoughts from me on what's important when it comes to this kind of position. So at the start of the week here, I'm talking about small sided games. So, you know, I suppose I looked at the phrase and didn't realize just how much this is built into the type of coaching that I would do. I'm sure the type of coaching that most people do, which is to create those, you know, those scenarios where you're breaking things down, but, you know, into, you know, advantage plays, or if it's 2-on-1s or 3-on-2. I do a lot of that for defense. I think it's great, being one person down, but using that sort of a culture to build these skill sets, competitive goals. So again, things should be, and I always try to use, because we have so little time, I think when we are coaching, that you try to use every opportunity to make it as effective as possible. And I think this notion that everything should have a time, or, you know, should have a score, or should have some type of goal to achieve, I think is important, because that just keeps that edge that you need, that competitive edge that you need in practices to translate into games. And then Carl last night spoke about teaching how to play, and you know, you can't really say it any better than you have to teach players how to play. You know, there is a time and place for absolutely everything, but I believe, and again, you know, through what I've spoken about tonight, is that you cannot, you know, deny. I don't believe you should deny players the opportunity to develop skill sets, and I think it's the onus is on you as coaches to teach them how to play the game of basketball, and not just how to move in the means and the formats and formations that you want them to. For myself, some additional thoughts. Uncontested repetition, you know, there was a little bit of I know over the course of the week, you know, different coaches weigh in with you know, how much or how little they may do when it comes to uncontested repetition of certain things. And I believe there, again, there's a time and place for that, because of the second point, which is you've got to let your players feel the game. You know, and basketball really has a great sense of you know, you being kind of connected to it on an emotional level, connected to it on a kind of a spiritual level. But I think players have to be able to feel what it's like to do something. And I think repetition is important in an uncontested way to let them feel that. And again, you layer this stuff up to being competitive, to being contested, and as the skill sets evolve, then it changes. But it's always good to, I think, to allow a player to feel what it's like to do what you're trying to get them to do it. And then equally as important, to help your players to see what it is that you want them to do. You know, I know from me growing up and watching a lot of basketball, it is an unbelievable means by which to learn. And I think sometimes maybe players today need some assistance on what they should be looking for. So whether you're showing them themselves on tape, or whether you're showing them players that they should look at, I think it's important that, you know, players who are interested in and want to get better, it's important that you help them and aid them in seeing how to be better. So just finally, you know, great concept that was being spoken about this week and fully get it is layering. So kind of layering on top, and layering skills and layering development on top of each other, rather than it can't be in isolation, you know. And I find that a lot. And again, it's you know, as a coach, you got to figure out how to deal with these. But you know, you could be in practice and you could show, you know, something, and you could get them to be played. You could have it done in a competitive manner in a small-sided game, and you think you got it, and then 15 minutes later you go back to it, and it's like it's gone. Like, you know, so this kind of this repetition and this layering all these skill sets, and making sure that you're constantly vigilant to you know, to your players, receiving them, adapting them, and making them part of their automatics, let's say. So, you know, that idea of layering, I think, is a wonderful concept, and it's exactly what I think the way that you need to develop a player. It's you know, from the fundamentals down, and you just layer and layer the skill sets on top of them. What about the dot, do they have a place? I'm not here to say that of all the things that you're doing are wrong and that they don't have a place. They absolutely do. You know, the idea I had behind presenting to tonight really was about the position. It was really about talking about playing in that position, rather than the notion of what a post player is. Because, and again, you know, the next point goes into that, which is, you know, the actions, the reads, the rules, the plays. And again, you know, last night Carl was talking about his 5-out offense, you know, excellent for, you know, developing tons of different skills, all players on an equal basis. And you're getting players into the positions that you want to get them into. But, you know, during some of those segments, you will see guards catching the basketball in pretty much a traditional low post position. And if you haven't taught that player what to do there, then there's no point. You know, then you've gotten what you wanted, but you haven't developed a player to be able to execute in that position. So I suppose my thought process on this was that it's not about post players and tall, you know, physically larger. It's about the positions on the floor and the kind of IQ and traits that you need to be successful there, whether you're 7'1" or whether you're 4'11". You know, whoever finds themselves in that position needs to be able to execute. And that's kind of, I suppose, the real thing for me. And lastly, you know, fundamental probably to how I coach is this ability and this need to be able to answer why. As a coach, you know, and again earlier in the week there was, I think Niall was talking about different styles of coaching, whether you're more democratic or whether you're more autocratic. Or I think for me it always comes down to this: if I can answer the question why, and I should be able to answer the question why I'm asking someone to do something. Conversely, I ask players why they chose the choices they make or the decisions they take, and with that I think comes discussion and come learning. So for me, as long as you're able to answer why, then I think you're onto a good thing. And that is it from me.
Suzanne, phenomenal. Nothing less than expected. You know, absolutely tremendous information. I think that's the important thing. And I think there's a couple of things that have come up during that presentation that have been preached, and nothing has been tactical or technical. It's all about layering, anticipation, and the why. And I think you really touched on all those things that all the previous speakers have spoke about during the week, and it's fantastic how you were able to link all that sort of stuff in, especially the small-sided games as well, and how you can deal with things in the post. We have a couple of questions coming in, just while I'm talking with that, I liked your phraseology of uncontested repetition, as opposed to going against no defender or stuff like that. So that's the one I'm going to absolutely steal from you without question. The position versus the player, various spots on the floor. So in terms of something else you said, being agile and having automatics, is that something that you have something that should be, that there are certain automatics that every post player should have, or are there automatics depending on the natural skill set of the player in question?
I think it's a personal thing. You know, I think it's a personal thing for a player to have, you know, automatics. You know, if I look at Gráinne Dwyer, I can tell you one of hers. You know, she feels contact on her back and she does that, you know, brilliant move, that kind of hook move. You know, really rotates the hip all the way around every single time, and you know what's happening. You know, but she still does it. Michelle Fahy, probably one of the best players to do like that kind of small baby hook shot, both hands. It's whatever works for you, but having that means it's your go-to. Because what will happen is, you know, with scouting, with everything else, you'll get stopped, you know, and then comes in the, have you learned, you know, have you developed that skill set of you turn in, you've gone to your automatic, oh, I see a defender. Now what's my decision making? What's my choice that I make here? Am I countering that, or am I now passing that to a better option? So you have to have those automatics, those places where you feel comfortable, because the next layer of your development is, well, that's your A game, now that's your B game. How do you develop your B game?
Yeah, and I suppose to counter that, every automatic, you should know the counter.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, absolutely, for sure. And again, once you start with your, you know, with the first part of it, then absolutely, you know, you'll start confronting with that, and you develop the counters for that. But it's, you know, you should have those moves that you go to, because I think in any moment in the game, it's settling. You know, you say it to a shooter, you know, you say it to any position on the floor. There's always something you want to go to that will settle you back to where you need to be, that will balance you back to where, you know, if you've had a rough spot or a rough couple of minutes. And having those automatics can be a nice way to achieve that.
Yeah, for sure. For all those coaches out there, offensive rebounding, and all of a sudden they're like 2 feet from the basket, 4 defenders all over their back, and you hear from the sidelines, get up, go up. And the player in question knows it's not a good option, kicks it, backs out. What's your response to that?
That's the right option. Absolutely, it's the right option. I mean, it's I suppose, never is it a good idea that, and again, unless you're for some reason you're towering over these players and you're 6 foot and they're all 3'2", I mean, then yes, you go straight back up. I mean, in a realistic game where you have offensive rebound, I mean, it's not necessarily the right option to go up. Sometimes it is. But offensive rebound, 3-point shot, I get that. I completely get that. I think it's a great action. You build that into what you're doing, brilliant. My point being that 3-point shooter can also be someone who's playing in the post position, and the more you have that, then the more weapons that you have. You may not find 4 people on you if you've been able to extend your offense that way.
From a male perspective, I guess like Jordan Noonan is that kind of prime example of starting as a point guard in his career and finishing as a post player, because of the fact that he developed those post skills as a guard when he was younger. He was able to finish out that way in his career. So that's definitely the way to go with it. So, Carl Cabride, firing back at you, Suzanne. You spoke about the importance of teaching post players how to shoot the ball and handle the ball. How much importance do you put on teaching guards how to post up smaller defenders and work footwork posting up?
100%. And you know what? So when I got to that final slide where we talked about, and really what got me thinking about this was thinking about the footage that Carl had last night. And it's one of the things that I believe is, no matter what your offense is, you the action you take, you screen, you pick and roll, whatever it is that you're doing, you ultimately are trying to get the ball in a position, and it may be to a specific person, or in like the 5-out, it could be anyone, So some of that footage where you have, and a Jay Daly, who's for me probably I think she's a wonderful player, cutting and catching the ball in a low post position, right? So had all that space, cut from the weak side, caught it in a low post position, and did a post move. What's the point in Jade being in that position if she's not able to pull off a post move? Because at that time, I'm not quite sure that she knows what defense is there, if it's her defender or someone else rotated over to her. So absolutely. And again, I suppose it's if you want players to play in those spots, find themselves in that position, those short corners, and for me, extended out 3-point shots, high posts, or anywhere in that, you have to teach them how to play that. Footwork, moves, having some of those automatics, equally important for a guard who may play in there as is to a post. And back to your point, Jared Noonan obviously learned that when he was younger, as a guard, being able to do that, because you can see that. I mean, amazing footwork in there.
Very good. So I think what we'll do now, Suzanne, is I'm going to invite more questions in from everybody. I'd like a bit more interaction, because I think last couple of nights I've been kind of putting all the questions out there with a few coming in. So I really would encourage anybody to read, and there we go. Ben Owens, with younger groups such as under 12s, would you start to teach post and guard skills or wait until 16 or 18? I think the question there is, would you teach both sets of skills at under 12, or would you wait to specialize at 16 or 18? Is that correct, Ben?
I think to what would you do at an under 12 at a young age? I think you have to teach them, the things that I've said are important in this position: the vision, the footwork, shooting, deception, teaching them how to do some of that stuff, balance, all equally important regardless of where on the floor you do it. I think what you can do is you see a lot of drills that you one-on-one drill, for example, not on the 12s, but let's say, but on one-on-one skills, you generally see them all starting on the wing and then players learning how to defend that one. You can, adopt these things and have them starting in different positions on the floor. So when you're doing footwork, you can do it in the guard positions, you can do it in the post positions, but you can teach them all the same thing. I think I encourage you to do that, because I think it's too early to start to assign a sense for these players as to what their playing position is. I think that evolves and develops over time. Certainly under 12, I would think it's too young. The more basics they have at that age as they move forward and move upwards, then the more opportunity they'll have when they get there.
Great point to finish on. I'll certainly have one or two more questions at the end when we link in yourself and Puff, if that's okay, Suzanne. So I'll catch up with you in about a half an hour, 35 minutes. Thanks so
Okay,
much.
great.
All right, Puff, let's bring you in. Let's make you a presenter. 2 seconds now. Where am I? Apologies, all apologies. Oh, there we go. All right, Puff, I think you're good to go.
Hold on. That's not what I want. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, I can hear you. We just don't see a screen just yet.
Okay. Can you see me now?
I can see you, yeah.
Okay. I think, Paul, it would be the easiest thing if you shared the screen on yours, because I don't think you can see me if I share my screen.
Perfect. Let me just bring it up. This is our contingency plan, huh?
Yeah.
All right. 2 seconds.
Because I want the
now.
people to be able to see me as well, you know?
Yeah, yep. 2 seconds out. So I gotta make myself presenter, but then you can still. Okay, 2 seconds. I'll take my webcam off. Hold on, whether show my screen. So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it now, Paul.
Is the presentation up?
It was. It's not now.
Okay.
There it is. There.
Perfect. All right, you just tell me when you want me to move slides.
Okay. All right. So we can see the screen. You can hear me. Okay, we're good. Okay, so I'm going to run through, and I'm going to try to run through it pretty quickly. Suzanne did a great job, obviously, talking about the post player and everything, or the forward, I should say, and everything that goes along with that. I'm here to talk about the point guard, the position that runs the world, which, so to speak. So point guard, I got that from, I think there was an old Slam magazine about Chris Paul a long time ago, and it said the next era of point guard. So I've been calling the position that ever since. And just for the sake of this presentation, I do a lot of talking about the NBA and NBA point guards because I'm a huge NBA guy. I've watched a lot, and I'll talk about how important I think it is for young point guards to watch other point guards in order to improve at the position. But more than anything, to me, the point guard is more of mentality than a certain position. You know, obviously I've played the point guard position, and I've been the ball handler is what they call it in Ireland sometimes. Ball carrier, all these different things. But to me, it's more of a mentality. It's unselfish, relentless, and sometimes seemingly irrational belief in yourself and the players around you. And then really it's just the person on the floor who does what needs to be done, for his team. So, we talk about point guards, and I have 3 there that I'll talk about really briefly in a second from the NBA. But, guys who aren't actual point guards who actually have done that job are Kevin Garnett, LeBron James, even Michael Jordan, guys who are not necessarily point guards, but, do the things that help their teams win. So, it could easily be a forward, could be considered a point guard. I think Suzanne said earlier that the forward position should be where the most assists come from, and I 100% agree. You see with Joker with Denver Nuggets, offenses run through him. Offenses are starting to run through post players. So the point guard position is changing, but it's more mentality for me than it is actual position. All right, but in talking about the one spot, the point guard position, these are 3 of my favorite. Isaiah Thomas on the far left there, the original Isaiah Thomas from the 90s Pistons, 80s, 90s Pistons, tough, charismatic, pesky, led historically underrated, great team to 2 championships. And he was the guy who was always preaching team. He probably could have been, one of the best point guards ever, as far as stats, but, he put everything into his team, and just really epitomizes the grittiness that point guards have. And then in the middle there is Gary Payton, just a lot of swagger. He kind of came into the league in the early 90s, and there was like Magic Johnson, who was 6'9", and we had Oscar Robinson back in the 60s, who was 6'5", 6'6" point guard. But those are 2 anomalies, 2 outliers as far as the position goes. He came into the league where the position was really 6 foot, 6'1" guys, really fast, and he brought a sense of physicality, a sense of bully ball to the position, which I always kind of looked up to. Defensively, he was a terror, on the ball, off the ball. He was one of the first point guards I saw that, he could switch over to shooting guards and not get posted up. He was pesky enough and cute enough to get in there and be able to front and not get posted up. And then on the far right, Steph Curry, who everybody knows. He is, for me, what the position is becoming. Obviously, the way that he shoots the ball has changed everything in the landscape of basketball in general. What I love about Steph the most, though, is the fact that because he can shoot, his unselfishness is like he can go entire quarters or sometimes entire games without having to shoot the ball, because the sheer threat of him shooting it, creates a lot of open looks for his teammates. So for young point guards watching a Steph Curry, the things that I would encourage you to watch is to watch the way he moves without the ball, the way he screens. He's probably the best point guard screener ever, next to John Stockton, which is a very underrated, skill in basketball, the ability to screen and get other people open. So these are just kind of 3 guys who have come to epitomize what the position is for me. You go to the next slide, please, Paul. All right, so just within this presentation, I think every presenter has kind of hit on all of these before they start talking. So it's just nearly every always is already partially wrong. Nearly every never has an exception. Nearly every right way has wrong moments. Nearly every wrong way has right moments, right? So everything that I say here, it is subjective. It's from the experience that I have and the research that I've done on this position. So you might disagree. People might disagree with it, and that's fine. And what I really want to do is I want to get through this presentation so that we can get to the end of it, so we can have questions. So if somebody doesn't agree with something that I said, then we can discuss it. I think that's what the whole point of Paul bringing all these together is, for us to come together as coaches and to start conversing and sharing our different visions and different ideas, about what basketball is. And, this is just my thoughts of what a point guard is and should be. You can go to the next slide, Paul. Okay, so let's build a point guard. All right, we're gonna build them and so I'm in a really different position in my life right now, because I have an 11-year-old daughter who is probably, judging by the size of her daddy and the size of her mama, she's probably gonna have to be a point guard. So I'm really trying to build her from the ground up, and it's like starting from zero with a blank canvas. What do you want in a point guard? What do I want her to have? What do I want all the young point guards that I work with to have? And what am I striving to have still as a player who's kind of at the twilight of his career? So these are just intangibles, traits that aren't necessarily on the court, but have a lot to do with what happens on the court. All right, so first is mentally tough. My point guard has to be mentally tough, and probably one of the most overused terms in basketball and sports in general. What does it look like? What can it be taught? So for me, first and foremost, mentally tough means you have to have the next play mentality. You have to have the mentality to move on when something doesn't go your way. You have to have the mentality to be able to infuse that in your teammates and to get in their heads enough to understand that when they make a mistake or something doesn't go their way, we have to move on to the next play. And I see this all the time in the Super League. There's guys that, me included sometimes, I'm not putting myself above it, but there are times when refs make bad calls and, we react a certain way, or coaches do something or sub us out and we don't want to be subbed out. And, we react a certain way and our body language reacts a certain way. And it totally takes us and our team away from the end goal, which is winning that particular game or that next possession. So, there's a lot of examples of mental toughness for me. So one that I've seen a lot, and I've found myself in a position as a player that, especially kind of come, mid-February or say a December night, into practice, and you're scrimmaging for 5 or 6 minutes. And I know all coaches, Paul, I know you've seen it in your practices before. You see we're scrimmaging and it gets really, really ratty. It gets really scrappy 5 or 6 minutes in a row. Everybody's tired. So what I'm looking for in my point guard is that they have that mental toughness enough to keep playing at pace, to keep playing hard, to keep setting screens, to keep talking and communicating when they're dead tired, to keep with our defensive principles. Those things that probably get overlooked, but if my point guard can do that, then, I feel like somebody else is going to have to do it as well to keep up with the point guard. And, that scrappy 5 or 6 minutes that we probably won't get anything out of. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit, it becomes useful instead of just a waste of time. Because, especially here in Ireland, if you're only practicing 2 or 3 times a week, or if you're with national teams and you get, maybe 1 or 2 meeting times a month, then that 5 or 6 minutes, it means something. So every second means something. And how is my point guard gonna respond after a bad turnover? I think the Cup final this year was one of my biggest accomplishments as far as pat on the back moments, because and I'll talk just briefly about it, but we were up by 11 with 3 minutes left, 3:30 left, I think. I had a big time steal. I'm feeling good about myself. I see Lorcan streaking down the lane or streaking down the sideline. So throw it to him, turn the ball over. They come down, hit a 3. Now we're down 8. Now we're up 8. And then the very next possession, I catch the ball on the short corner. I turn it over again, and they come down. Josh Wilson, their point guard, gets a 3-point play. So we go from 11-6 or 11-5 in 2 possessions. And then the third possession down, I come down, we swing the ball. Steve James throws the ball to me in the corner. I shoot a 3 and I make it, but it's nullified because I didn't get it off in time. So I was supposed to be the veteran leader, kind of guy who steadies the ship when I come in the game. And I have 3 turnovers, 3 costly turnovers in a Cup final situation. And I only watched it back recently, and I watched my body language after the 3 was nullified. And the first thing that I did was I clapped my hands and I said next play, and you can see it if you go back and watch it. And I said we got to get a stop to my teammates. And it was kind of one of those moments that it was kind of, I'm walking the walk. I'm not just talking the talk. So it was, after all these things that I've been through as far as my career and the scoring and whatever I've done, seeing that on film and the fact that I was able to bounce back and show a little bit of mental toughness was probably one of my proudest moments. And just lastly, with mental toughness, I know we talked about kind of moving away. Everybody's moving away from the kind of old school coach yelling in kids' faces, but that's the life that I grew up with. That's how I knew that a coach kind of cared about me. And when coaches yelled and got in people's faces, it was always the point guard who had to, if he was the one getting yelled at, he had to react and up the intensity in practice. And if he was the one, if it was another teammate getting yelled at, I need my point guard to be the one to go over and put his arm around that player and let him know that everything's okay. So number 2, best communicator on the team. I think we all have said this or talk about this all the time, communicating. And for me as a point guard, it's not about the rah-rah and saying nothingness, but it's the willingness to consistently communicate. So that's in games, on the bench, in practice, in every single drill, in the changing room. So you have to consistently be willing to communicate. And there's a lot of quiet quiet leaders that you don't have to talk all the time. You know, John Stockton was a really quiet guy. You know, Johnny Grinnell, if going back a little bit, you know, when I first got here, he was probably one of the best point guards I ever played against in Ireland. Didn't talk much, but when he did talk, he was saying things that need to be said, and people listened to him, people respected him. And you know, so my point guard has to be taught. I have to hear his voice. And the way I put it, if I got kicked out of a game coaching wise, you know, obviously we have assistant coaches, but my point guard should be there to help those assistant coaches get through the rest of the game. You know, that's the level of communication I want from my point guard. And you know, underneath communicator, it says the ability to listen, which is probably more important. You know, being a great leader, being a great point guard means that you're not always the one who has to rule every conversation. You're not the only voice in every huddle. So my goal as a point guard is to learn the pulse of every team that I'm on. And in order to do that, I got to start listening to people. I have to empathize with my bigs. You know, when the coach is getting on them about not posting up, I have to let them know that I understand where they're coming from. I have to talk to the wings. I have to ask them, you know, why they're not getting the ball in a certain place, what the problem is. So, you know, listening is as important a part of communicating as doing the talking is. Third thing for me is best physical shape. That's point blank. I'm old school. My point guard's got to do extra. You know, he's got to be the guy who's there first. He's got to be the guy who's there afterwards. He's got to be the guy who, if you're not in shape when it comes training camp and the beginning of the season, you're picking up full court and all of the scrimmages, because you know that we have, you know, you have to be the one that is the head of the snake. You know, it's the way I've been my whole life. It's the way I was taught to be. It's the way I'm gonna, you know, get after every point guard that I coach from here on out. Like, you got to be the one. You know, fourth is this. I got this from Coach McKillop when I was in college, and it's just another toughness thing. It's just a willingness to stick your nose in, a willingness to do the dirty work. You know, if there's a loose ball and there's 3 or 4 people around, you know, some people will kind of stick their hand in and hope that they get it. I need my point guard to go all the way in and put his body on the line, and I need us to get that loose ball, and I need your willingness to stick your nose in and do little things like that. It'll obviously transfer to everybody else. And with all of these things, it's, you know, it's do as I do, not as I say. So I can be the best communicator and I can scream and I can shout, but if I'm allowing somebody to beat me middle, you know, constantly, then you know, all the stuff that I'm saying doesn't really hold much clout. So every point guard that wants to be great, I need you to be a guy or girl who leads by example first and foremost. And like I said, that's not just the point guard position, that's point guard mentality, and anybody who's a leader on your team, you need to have that. All right, Paul, if you can go to the next slide, please. Is he gone? Oh, there we go. All right, so this is in terms of skills. So that was kind of the intangible things. So if we're talking about how are we going to build a point guard, skill-wise, these are the order of importance for me, and really the one at the bottom should be at the top. You know, I kind of put the offensive thing because, you know, the offense is always sexy. Everybody pays attention to that. But first and foremost, you want to be a great point guard. I need you to be a pit bull. You know, people who spend time around me, as far as me coaching or playing or whatever, they know that everything for me is I'm trying to mimic. I'm trying to be a pit bull all the time. I'm trying to be disruptive and annoying, tenacious, and just relentless, and always making the opposite point guards feel uncomfortable. So in order to be that, it's, you know, you got to have strong legs, got to have quick hands, strong chest, strong-minded. Comes back into the mental toughness that I was talking about earlier. But so if you're a young guard and you want to stand out, don't worry about looking at all the highlights or anything else. If you want to look at anybody's highlights, look at Patrick Beverly, because he's annoying. He probably shouldn't be in the NBA, but he's a dog. He's a pit bull, and he'll always have a job because of it. So after that, so like defense and being that pit bull is kind of far and above everything else for me. And then it kind of falls in line here. And, you know, obviously the list the order of listing can be changed, and people that can be up for debate. But first and foremost, especially in today's game of basketball, point guard has to be a great shooter. You have to be able to stretch the floor. So that means catch and shoot. So if you're a young player, like my daughter can't dribble for anything, which, probably confuses a lot of people. They probably think my daughter is going to be the one who can, do all the dribble moves, whatever. She can't dribble for none. And but she is. She can shoot. She can. It's true. She can't. I mean, maybe I'm being hard on her. Maybe I got that old school in me a little bit, but she can shoot that thing though. And I think that's first. I think you got to be a great shooter. You got to be able to space the floor. And like Suzanne said, we got to dump it down to the post all the time. So if I dump it down to Jason and he gets double teamed and he kicks it back out to me and I miss 3 in a row, then he not gonna give it to me a 4th time. You know what I mean? So if you can't shoot the ball, if you can't space, then you're putting your team at a big time disadvantage. So it starts with catch and shoot, then being able to shoot off the dribble. And I know a lot of people probably. I heard Paul's podcast when last week when he talked about his the shots they work on are a lot of threes and getting to the rim. And I understand the analytics about the mid-range shot. So just for all you young point guards, anybody watching or coaches of young point guards, the way I learned the position was that the point guard is the middleman, meaning that it's my job to dump it down to my post players or dish off on drive to the bigs. It's also my job to get into the lane and kick to my shooters. So in that middle ground, I have to be a threat as well. So for me, it's not necessarily a shot that people have to shoot all the time, but it has to be a shot that is in your point guard's repertoire, being able to hit the mid-range, 1-2 dribble pull up, floaters, anything within, kind of outside the key, just to keep defenses honest, because like, if you have a great team in the Europeans who are really closing out that 3-point line, and then you have, 6'9", 6'11" waiting for you down there, for us little guards, it might not always be the case where we get all the way in there and finish at the rim. So we at least need to have in our repertoire the ability to hit mid-range shots. Secondly, just as important as being a great shooter is we have to be able to finish at the rim. All right, so I know Suzanne talked about having 1 or 2 automatics. And for me, automatics, this is every point guard from whatever age you start basketball at until, I'm almost 37 now. So it needs to be, everything starts off 2 feet. Can I finish off 2 feet? I know there are a lot of Jay Wright fans here from the college game in America who everything he teaches once you get in the lane is 2 feet. So I would encourage coaches to teach their players how to get into the lane and get into a jump stop and finish from that first. So if you can finish 5 to 8 feet, I feel like everybody in the country can be ambidextrous, right? You can use your left hand, you can use your right hand. Off 2 feet, I finished right, I finished left, right? 2 automatics you have to have. And then after that, we talk about off 1 foot. So your traditional layups are, finish with the right hand off the left foot, finish with the left hand off the right foot. And now you have to add in, you have to be able to finish off the left foot with the left hand, same foot, same hand, right foot. So those are 6 essentials that every player needs to work on a daily basis. I call those everydayers. So every day you're in the gym, if I'm working on finishing, it has to be off 2 feet with either hand, off either foot with either hand. And once we get from there, now you can start doing some of the fun stuff. You got your Euro step and your pro hop and, your spin moves. And so you can create off of that. So like instead of calling a move and a counter, I would really call, the way that I teach it, if you get into the lane and you jump stop, if you cut off my jump stop, I'm not calling a step through a counter. I'm calling that just a different option. I call it options instead of moves and counters, because it comes to be like a jump stop, jump hook is one move, and then a jump stop step through is another move. So instead of really counter, it's almost like it's 2 different moves. So I teach it as the first thing you learn is your jump stop, and then from there I teach options off that jump stop. So I can jump stop and I can finish on my right. I can jump stop, I can reverse pivot, and I can finish on the opposite side. And that's, kind of all the stuff that you see Jared Noonan that he had in his bag is because he had great footwork as a guard. So now when he gets a little bit older and they throw him down to the post, he feels very comfortable being down there. So ability to finish is very, very important for a point guard. And third, you have to be able to handle pressure. All right. So I think, I think I've done every single ball handling drill in the whole world. I think I've tried every one. I've looked at everything on every site, everything. Like when I was a young kid, I used to get the VHS tapes. I used to do Gannon Baker workouts. I've done more ball wraps than anybody in the whole world, I feel. This was my thing. But, it became at a certain stage, it was like, do I want to be a dribbler, a great dribbler who can go do halftime shows, or do I want to be somebody who can handle the ball and get to a spot on the court where I know I can be effective? So it's like, everybody now, the young kids look at Kyrie Irving. He's like, the best thing. He's highlight material. Everything is like in and out, cross through the legs, blah, 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 and which is great because he can still get to his spots, but it has our kids thinking that, that's the way to be a great point guard. And then I look at somebody like Chris Paul, who, he looks like reliable. He's 34, 35 in the NBA. He comes down slow. Everything is slow. And when he wants to go, he explodes and he gets to the spot that he wants to get to every single time. If you watch old John Stockton film, for you young point guards, go watch some John Stockton tape. He was a 6 foot unathletic white guy in a crazy athletic NBA back then, and he played 19 years. And what he would do is he would get point guards on his hip. Even though he was smaller, he'd get him on his hip. He'd go over to the left wing time after time after time. They would set a cross screen for Karl Malone. He'd throw it into Karl Malone. Karl Malone scored 37,000 points. And that all was because John Stockton had the ability to get to a spot, hold a defender off and make a post entry for Karl Malone to be great. Obviously, Karl Malone was great in his own right, but it helped having that great point guard feeding him the rock for 19 years or 18 years. And secondly, with the ability to handle pressure, something that I don't think we teach at all is our guards have to start playing in different cadences. So you see kids dribble the ball and they come down, and even guards in the Super League, and I've been able to time it a lot, they dribble 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000. It's always the same. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And after a while, if you have a good defender, especially if you're going to Europeans and you get to the upper level Super League, or we got people going away to the States and people going away to play in Europe now. So if you get to higher levels, if you have that same cadence on your dribble all the time, very easy for a defensive pest to time that. And as the ball is coming back up to your hand, right, that time where you don't have any control of it, we can dart in and we can get steals. And I got about 7 or 8 this year of really, really good point guards that, I shouldn't be taking the ball from, but it's just, I don't think we ever really working on 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, working in different cadences. So I think that's really important in developing our young point guards. And fourth on this list, and it's not fourth, like for me, it really should be great shooter, ability to finish the rim, ability to handle pressure. And right beside that, it should be decision maker, because that becomes a part of basketball from as soon as you start playing. How do I get past this guy? Once I get past this guy, what am I going to do? So as young as under 10s, we need to be working on decision making. And I think a lot of people would probably just put that first on the list, but I think rather than being fourth, it should probably be alongside the skills. And how do we create a great decision maker? It's I think Kieran hit it on the head earlier this week with small-sided games. I think people, when they think of me as a coach, they think, that guy probably does like an hour and 15 of like ball handling, and then they do like 15 minutes of playing at the end of practice. Whereas when you really come into my practice, it's probably 90% is small-sided games. Everything starts one-on-one, because I'm like, man, I love one-on-one. It's, for me, growing up in the parks and everything like that, it was like, this is how you decide if you're good enough. If you can beat somebody man, and nobody else there to help, You know what I mean? Like, if I can beat you, then I can worry about having to make the decision with somebody else behind me. So we play a lot of one-on-one. And from that, especially from my point guards and from my ball handlers and decision makers, it's a lot, especially the senior ranks and my under 18 girls that I coach here in Kilkenny. It's a lot working off the ball screen. So it'll be just, something we do daily, even with Templeogue, is we get the ball to the wing, and then we have another guard go to the corner, and then we have a sprint screen coming. So after that sprint screen, the ball handler is coming off, and now it's, make the decision. Can I turn the corner and get to the rim? Can I hit the roller? Can I hit the person lifting out of the corner? Like, very, very simple. And then obviously when you want to add weak side over there, you can make it 4-on-4. So now once I get into the lane, can I draw that weak side defender in so I can draw and kick and get my shooter a shot, or give him an opportunity to create a long closeout? But small sided gains is everything. So, I work a lot of people out kind of one on just me with the other kid, which I try not to do as much, because it's that the whole decision making process is, I need them to have that all the time. So I'll do a lot of stuff with, different colored tennis balls, or, I'll have a black tennis ball and a red tennis ball. And if I drop the red tennis ball, you have to go right. If I drop the black tennis ball, you have to go left. Just trying to make our young players' minds think and do multiple things all the time. But small sided games, it has to be a staple. And there's so many different elements and different ways you can set it up in different situations that we can do. Okay, Paul, can you go to the next slide, please?
There's just a small lag on my side with you, Pop. That's it.
Okay.
See it?
Okay, point guards. Yeah. All right, point guards in Ireland that our young point guards can learn from. And this is any other point guards who are out there that I didn't put on this. I don't want you to take it as a slight, so that next year you try to come in my head because I ain't put you on the slides for this presentation. But these are just 6 that I really enjoy playing against, and they're all so different. So I think if our young players focus in on them, then they can get a lot from it. The first one is Scott Kinnavan, and he is just strong, just physically strong. He's annoying, pesky. I know everybody in the league hates Scott to play against him because he's just annoying you all the time. But as a teammate, people love to be on his team, and he's a proven winner. Can really get the ball to shooters when they need it, on time, on target. Good off the ball screen, great in transition, great defender. Second in the middle there is CJ Fulton, young, still under 18. And he's kind of a look into the future for me. So the way he shoots the ball, the distance he shoots the ball from, he shoots it effortlessly. And I know for a fact from talking to his dad that CJ is constantly in the gym. So if you want to know how to be a good young point guard, just understand that CJ is making 400 or 500 shots on a daily basis, and that's no word of a lie. That's not it. That's not making anything up. He puts in the work, and because he can stretch the floor, this year it really allowed the rest of his game to flourish. He got a little bit stronger. He can finish at the rim a little bit better. And to be so young, he plays with an act. So we played him this year at our home gym, and they run a sideline play. And CJ is usually in the strong side corner because they're running him off a double stagger. And whenever he goes to the weak side, it's always to try to get CJ on a back door. And I knew this. I did the scout for it. CJ lined up on the weak side. This little dude set me up so smooth, and he hit me on the back door. He got a layup. He was looking at me, looking behind me, and I was mad because I just felt like the old dude who just got burned. But it was, he had an act, and I fell for it. So the poise and the way he plays with an act is unbelievable for a young guard. And our younger point guards, and even our older point guards, need to look at CJ too and see how he's doing things. In the right-hand corner here, Barry Drum, best stop-and-go guy in the country, super shifty, pauses off the ball screen, see what's going on, uses his eyes to get defenders to stand up. Great mid-range, really extended his range out to 3 a little bit more, put a lot of work in the summertime. So, really learning how to shift your body side to side, young guards can learn from him. Paul Dick is, to me, he's like the Irish version of Gary Payton. He's 6'4", he's physically imposing. He's like next wave because, you know, growing up, it's always the little guy who gets to handle the ball and be the point guard. But he's showing that, you know, if you're 6'3" and 6'4", you don't have to, and he, you know, it's something that coaches need to pay attention to, that we have this 6'4" point guard, that if you have a 6 foot kid at age 12, 11 or 12, don't automatically assume that he or she just needs to be on the block the whole time. You know, I think Suzanne talked about developing guard skills with post players and forwards anyway. So this is why we need to be doing guard skills with taller players and post skills with smaller players, because you just don't know. But Paul is, you know, he's just a bully. So usually when I love playing against taller guards, because they always kind of look down on you like, oh, this little guy can't do anything. So it gives you that automatic chip on your shoulder, like, you know, this tall dude don't think I can rock. Get him, but Paul has like, he has like little guy syndrome as well. Like he has the same chip. So, you know, if you want to see, I've seen progress that a lot of the time now he's making that hockey assist, so the pass that leads to the assist, which is a really, really unselfish play, and I think he's become one of the best at it. In the middle there, down at the bottom, Kyle Hosford just plays so smooth, poise and pace all the time, never in a rush. One of the most athletic point guards I think Ireland's ever had. And, you know, we have a lot of athletes coming up the ranks, but what really stands out to me with Kyle, and I think he really benefited from playing under Colin O'Reilly, is that he became a great catch and shoot guy, which really opened up even more his athleticism and his ability to get to the rim. And then in the corner here is Isaac, and Isaac Westbrooks just personifies swagger. He walks like, you know, what a point guard should walk like. Shifty, high basketball IQ, really cute. You know, he plays with an edge defensively. You know, doesn't like to get posted up by bigger guards. You know, really cute, can get steals from behind, always sticking his hands in, reading passing lanes. So these are 6 guards that we can all learn from a lot. Okay, Paul, next slide, please. Almost done, guys. All right, so what can we do to help them? The next slide is just a little exercise, and I'm going to send the document to Paul so he can put on the huddle, just so we can have. It's just you know, I think film is the most powerful tool to quicken the process of improvement. So we need to steer players towards what and who to watch, and you know, and show them what they should be looking for. I think, you know, one of the silliest things we could do is say, hey, Johnny, go watch Steve Nash, be like Steve Nash. It's ridiculous because there's one Steve Nash. Or if I say, hey, go watch Paul Dick and do what he does, you know, and give my players no, if I don't give them a pathway, then they just watch the highlight. They watch when he hits the step back 3 and they think that's what they should be doing. So when we tell our kids to go watch and tell them to watch full games, when we tell them to watch these full games, tell them to watch something specific. So watch how Steve Nash set up his defender before he uses the ball screen. You know, watch how he makes himself skinny when he's on defense trying to get over a screen. So we need to give them specifics to focus on when watching film. And then hopefully if they can do that with other players and critique other players, then when they get film of themselves, they start to critique themselves. And that's how we start to really push the curve ahead and make, you know, smart, high IQ players. Second thing here is teach them reads in as simple a manner as possible. So if I have a young guard and we start doing ball screen stuff, what am I teaching them? First thing is, can you reject the screen? This is just an example, but can you reject the screen? Okay, can't reject the screen. Can I turn the corner when I come off that ball screen? Okay, if I can't turn the corner, am I drawing 2 players? Can I make a pass that gives us an advantage, right? So if they hard hedge and they roll hard, and my big is rolling hard. Can I make a pocket pass or over the top pass that gives it to him? Or can I throw it to the weak side to a shooter who can then attack and give us a 4-on-3 situation? So we have to make those reads as simple as possible, especially for our young guards, so that they know certain things they should be looking for coming off screens, just for example. And last thing, most important to me as far as making the mentality for a point guard is we got to flip flop. We got to allow our young guards to play in the post. We got to allow them to be without the ball, play without the ball, and get on the wing, because we're in a situation now with the senior team that, I just had 6 guys on a list that I can add another 6 or 7 to, as far as elite point guards in the country, that Mark Keenan has to pick 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or whatever. So if some of those guys, we're probably going to end up playing with 2 on the floor at the same time at the senior level. So if you can't play without the ball in your hands, then automatically it's, you're kind of shortening yourself. You know what I mean? So what we got to do at a young age is we got to teach them to play without the ball, play on the wing, play in the post. And from a leadership standpoint and a point guard mentality standpoint, if I know what it's like, and I know because I luckily had coaches, and I've gotten down there and I've played on the post and messed around just in workouts and stuff like that. So I know what it's like, and I know how much that it hurts your back having somebody lead into your back every single time. Like, point guards need to understand how hard that is. They catch it on the post, and I know everybody gives Jason a hard time, like, go down there and post up, go down there and post up every single time. And it's just like, bro, I know your back hurt from getting beat up all the time. You know what I mean? So as a point guard, I got to be able to know what my post player is feeling. I got to know what it's like to run the wing and not get the ball for 4 straight possessions, and then hear my point guard screaming at me because I don't run on that 5th possession. So I got to know those situations. So as coaches, we got to put our point guards in situations where they know how to do everything, right? And especially from a standpoint of understanding our offenses. If I've played the 4 on our horn set and I understand exactly what the timing should be, then when I'm running it from the point, right, I can talk to my 4 and my 5, and then we can build a relationship on how to work on timing and things like that. Okay, last one, Paul. So this is just the document I'm going to send to Paul. It's just a study, and you can obviously, as a coach, you can change it for your forwards. You can change it for your 2s and 3s, whatever. It's just basically a study on film. And instead of breaking down plays or player tendencies, it gets your players to look at one specific player for the whole game, just one specific player, and you look at different things that he's doing each quarter. So one quarter it's look at his communication, and another quarter look at how he comes off ball screens, for example, and obviously you can change this up. And another quarter look at how he plays defense. What's he doing off the ball? Is he up on his opponent? Is he lazy off the ball? Is he communicating? So all these different things, and you get your player to really hone that on, and they write down everything. And once they write that down, they can start to see, I actually did it just to see, what it was like to do it. The other day, I did it with John Stockton in one of the 97 playoff series. And, I found myself writing down all these instances where, one of the best point guards in the whole history of basketball, I'm writing down, oh, John Stockton should have helped earlier there. John Stockton should have talked to his teammate and told him he was coming on a double because he left Steve Kerr wide open, blah, blah, blah. And, for me, when I'm looking at him making these mistakes, it makes it easier when I watch myself on film and making mistakes and like, okay, I can improve from that. I know I made the mistake. I've seen it. And now, for young kids, when they see that some of the same mistakes that they're getting yelled at in practice, they see, Steph Curry doing that, or Kyrie Irving making that same mistake, or, he doesn't talk and he gets hit on a screen or whatever it is, then that empowers kids. It's a game of mistakes, and we learn from film, and NBA players learn from film just like we're learning from it. So I think film is really powerful, and hopefully Paul's going to send this out to people, and you send it on to your players, and especially now when we got so much downtime, and kids are idle anyway. They just put on an NBA game. There's loads of women's Super League games, men's Super League games on the YouTube channel. All the European games that Basketball Ireland has been putting on the YouTube channel lately. So it's just an opportunity for us to really hone in on learning how to use film to our advantage. Okay, last one, Paul, I'm done. Questions?
2 seconds on. Let me just go back. All right. Let me just unshare that. All right, we're good. We're good. All right, so 2 very, very tremendous presentations. You know, you just nailed one of my questions at the end there about the relationship between the guard and the forward, which is what I'm preparing for a while. But anyway, we'll go on from there. A couple of quick ones. Let's just hit the questions in the sidebar real quick. Diego, welcome for the 4th night, Jer. Based on the point guard being, based on the PG being the communicator and on-court leader, should your point guard automatically be captain?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, I think I've, especially for me being here in Ireland, I've never, even if a coach came to me and was like, I wanted to make you captain, I would never, I don't need that. You know what I mean? A point guard shouldn't need to have that title. I think that's automatic. You know what I mean? I think, you know, even your point guard, if, so for me now, and this is, you know, I'm obviously using myself as an example, you know, I play on a team where there are 2 Americans and the other American plays majority of the minutes. So does that mean because I'm not on the court and playing a majority of the minutes, does that mean that takes my communication down? Like, no, 100%. Like, this is what you are. Regardless of what title you have, your job as the point guard is to be that communicator. And, you know, if I can have somebody else be the leader, the captain, then now we got at least 2 communicators out there. So you can never have too many people talking too much.
Very good, very good. Just something both of you mentioned before I go back to the questions in the sidebar. You both spoke about passers from the post, and Huff mentioned the Joker, and then Suzanne mentioned obviously a great image of your post player having great hands to be one of your best passers. The phraseology that's going on right now is like the inverted offense, so having your point guard in the post. So you're instead of like your old, we call it the point pipe, which is that pipeline rim to rim. I call that the old point guard spot. So now they're moving the point guard, so we're turning defenders' heads. Is that something that you both envisage as a future part of the game, or even has it been a traditional part of the game that we just never recognized as the inverted offense? Sorry, Suzanne, I muted you by accident a while ago. My apologies. 2 seconds. There we go. Should be okay.
Yeah, just, I mean, from my perspective, and again, it's you know, I think Puff did a great job too of you know, really kind of aligning. I think a lot of what we're saying is the same thing. It's you know, we're talking positional stuff here, like, so putting your point guard or putting a guard. I made reference to us having to do that when we were in Europeans, because the skill set was more developed in one of our guards than it was at that particular moment. So I absolutely think it's, you know, I think we may have been doing it, whether it's been purposeful or not. I'm not 100% sure, but I think, you know, again, one thing I didn't want to get into was the positionless, this whole notion of positionless playing, like, you know, but that certainly would be the foray into anybody in any spot, you know, doing anything. So absolutely, I think the short answer, yes. And why not?
Yeah. I think, you know, honestly, it's been going on for years, man. Like I say, I'm an NBA guy. So, you know, I grew up watching, you watch Mark Jackson, who's just backing guys down, and he's essentially playing a post-up position, you know, from the point guard. You know, Chris Paul right now, they run him to the block. And then from the block, once he faces up, it's the exact same as literally off the dribble from the wing and just getting into the lane. But then you're just already there. You know what I mean? So if you give your point guard the ball and he's kind of in the short corner and he faces up, and now I can get, you know, a step to the middle, now we've created an offense already. And this has been going on for years. And, you know, we talk about positionless basketball. So I think what we want is we just want people who can make a play. You know what I mean? So if my 6'8" forward can catch the ball and he has an advantage on his 6'9" guy who's guarding him, and he can create an advantage for our team, then why would I not put him up top and let him have the ball in his hands? You know what I mean? So I think, you know, I don't know about positionless, because positionless to me is saying the little guys are going to get rooted out, because, you know what I mean? I think, you know, you see it with even like Paul Dick. We got 6'4", 6'5" point guards now. It's like, damn, where are these little dudes going to be? But, you know, but absolutely, like, I feel like if I get somebody who's my size, you know, put me on that block, let me do something.
Any female point guards are being asked about, Puff?
Yeah, and I apologize about that. I meant to preface that before. You know, obviously I'm an NBA fan and I work on the men's side a lot, so I talked a lot about the male point guards today. But you know, we still have one of my favorite point guards that I've watched is Ashley Sullivan, who's playing. She played with Thunder in National League this year, but she was somebody who was you know, similar to what like Johnny Grinnell was for the men's side. You know, she didn't talk much and she wouldn't have scored a lot, but she was reliable and she was always there. She was always doing the right thing. Then you see like the young point guards like Dana Finn, who really come out and she's so dynamic, she's so athletic, can do a lot of different things. Abby Flynn is one of my favorite, who's near me down here in Waterford. Can just, you know, even at like, she's like CJ at a young age is really turning heads in the Super League, but you know, Abby is, you know, as strong and as physical as any, you know, American point guard I've seen come over here the last few years. And, you know, so there's some great point guards. Anya McKenna down in Glanmire, who is not so much a, you know, fancy do all this stuff off the dribble, but, you know, for sure she's one of those point guards that if you leave her open, she's going to make you pay. You know, there's a lot of great female point guards as well.
If in case people missed it, the first one that Puff said was Aisling O'Sullivan, right, Puff?
Aisling Sullivan, not O'Sullivan, just Sullivan.
My apologies. My apologies. One that came in, there's a couple of good questions that have to come in here now a second. But I just want to go back to something that I spotted between both of you. And both of you spoke about playing off of 2 feet around the rim. And I guess the big thing for us with our national team is having that pro stop to finish off of against the bigger guys. But I suppose the question for you, when you're playing off of 2 feet and there's body pressure on a shoulder or a hip, which foot do you teach as the pivot foot?
I think that's
the outside foot.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, but I think, you know, so if we're talking about skill development and developing young players, it's, you know, first is jump stop and just go straight up. And from that, you teach them how, you know, to step through off their, so if I'm going towards the left, my outside foot, which would be my right foot, I can step through and then go off my right foot, but then you can teach them to pivot off either foot. You know what I mean? So I think that's the maturation of young players is, you know, can I finish off 2 feet first and foremost, and then can I learn how to pivot off both feet equally? Like that's a well-rounded player.
I would agree that just on that one, it's for me, it's more, you know, and like we said before, it's not, this is about layering, you know, and about layering fundamentals. So absolutely, when you get to a higher level, then you need to play in different ways. I suppose I look at younger age basketball players and I see them wanting to be less physical, getting into positions close to the basket and coming off 1 foot, but being pushed away from the basket. So not being strong. I don't think we teach that, you know, that jump stop, that jumping into space, that, you know, pivoting and all that kind of stuff. So for me, again, my experience has been all the way up to under 18 Irish teams where I've almost tried to mandate that you play off 2 feet, and if you get checked or if you get blocked, then I'll take that one. But I think the benefits certainly outweigh mistakes that are made until you have that foundation, and then you layer and then you build.
I guess one of the things that we try and teach is defenders behind you, speed finish, which is off of 1 foot. Defenders on your hip or in front of you, it's a pro stop, which is your 2 feet. But I guess we try and have our pivot on the outside foot, which is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's unique, but because you can reverse away from the rim to get the defender leaning and then go at them again, I think, which is what Puff is talking about as well, is that up under. But also the reverse pivot allows us to pass and relocate the 3 and stuff like that. So again, it's all preference and things like that. So there's loads of questions here. It looks like I'm not going to have to ask any questions, but One from Andy McGeever. Let me just pull it up because apparently his chat's not working, so I got it through Messenger. How do you now this is a great one because I did the very same thing here with one of my questions in terms of so I would have asked who should the PG have the best relationship with. Andy's asking how do you develop a coach-player relationship or where the coach doesn't have to call a set or talk about tempo to where the PG becomes the extension of the coach like people always talk about. How do you develop that trust essentially?
I think for me, it takes some years, man. Like it takes, and you see people who have had success with their teams, underage teams. So I know Aaron was on here last night, and his Meteors team has been very successful in the Dublin ranks, but he's had them for 3-4 years. So even the fact that he's developing these girls who are talking about mindfulness and they really accepted that. It took a lot of them getting to understand who he was as a coach for them to buy into that. And the point guard coach relationship is the exact same. So, I knew Mark for a long time when I first came to Temple O, but even when I got there and I'm this experienced American point guard, he still, was trying to like play the PlayStation when I was out there and he's calling the plays. And I'm just kind of like, yo, like I know what to do. I know how to run it, but seeing that we didn't have the type of relationship that allowed him, that he trusted me right away, it's just a matter of talking to him and telling him what I see, which is hard for young guards. But the more you can start telling coaches what you see and why you made this decision, this is why as coaches we need to start, being willing to ask questions. And, just like I said, point guards, it was important for them to listen. It's important for coaches to listen to what their players are actually saying. So, once
that's one of the flaws, coach. So that's something that we need to.
Yeah. So once we get to that stage, and then as a coach, when I've listened and I start to trust this guy because he's speaking sense, like obviously now, okay, like he knows what I want, he knows the system. I'm gonna put the ball in his hands, and as a coach, that becomes fun then because you're not so stressed about having to call a play because that's in my guard's hands.
Which leads to the follow-on question, which is something that came in. How would you handle, and I think even as a forward, this might happen as well. So like if Suzanne's working the post areas and she finds a mismatch that she wants to work at and the point guard realizes it, but what happens on an inbound where a point guard calls a scheme and just as they're about to start going, the coach calls something different?
Whew, that's tough. All right, so this is not my advice. This is not my advice to young point guards. But for me, like if I've called something, it's obviously because I see something on the floor. Like I see that there might be a certain mismatch. And why is the coach calling the play? Because coach might call the play because he doesn't feel like the player, the point guard, can see, a situation. It can't see that our shooter hasn't touched the ball in 3 minutes. Can't see that Jason's mad because he hasn't touched the ball, so he's about to shoot something stupid if he doesn't touch it in the paint or something like this. So like if a point guard can't see that, I understand why a coach would do that. But for me, if I call a play, we're gonna run that play. And then I'm gonna be the one that goes to the bench, and coach is gonna yell at me, and I can take that because obviously I'm mentally tough, but I'm gonna take that one on the head. And I'm just gonna hope and pray that the play I called, that joint works. Because
sounds like me and Roy Downey.
Yeah.
Right. There's loads more here, so I hope everybody has another 10 minutes or so because this is going to take a while, I think, and they're all great questions. So I think it's important that we ask those.
I got.
Yes, I don't think we're going anywhere, are we? Right. So Jack Dooley, great question. And I think this when the question came in, I started thinking of both positions, and I guess it could be an answer for Suzanne as well. Ball screens under 12. Yes or no?
I'll take it first. So for me, I coach under 12 girls here in Kilkenny. I coach under 12 boys. I also coached the under 12 team in Australia when I played there, who when we went to the national tournament, we ended up finishing 6th in the nation in Australia. So it was a really, really high level under 12 team, if there's such thing. So we had some really good players, and So the coach who was in before me was running like sets. They had like coming off down screens and flares and like under 12. So I came in, I was kind of like, we're just going to pass and cut in space and learn how to play basketball and whatever. So parents were kind of at my head because I wasn't giving the kids this advanced stuff that they needed. So for me, like, what happens is if your team is ready for age, and I don't think many are in Ireland, then I think, okay, you can go to that next level and you can teach ball screens. I think the reason that we use it a lot here in Ireland is because we have a really, really good ball handler who's 11 and head and shoulders better than people. And we also have nobody in the country knows how to guard a screen at under 12s. So if you set a ball screen, you have this automatic advantage that your best player has a head of steam getting to the basket. You know what I mean? So if we're using it for that reason, just to get this advantage so we can, score 10 quick points, then I think no. I think if we're using it from the standpoint that we want to, start to teach our kids a little bit early, and we want to like actually explain to them what a ball screen is, what we're trying to look for, and they're ready for that, then I'm okay with that, I think.
Very good. Suzanne, from your perspective in that position, are ball screens effective at under 12?
I mean, I would agree with both. I mean, as long as it's not at the expense of other development, keys and things that are, so as long as you continue to give those kids what they need at that age group so their future or their career in basketball is elongated and they don't get, I suppose, somehow kind of phased out because you're now running ball screens for one or two players, and there's no participation and there's no all the other stuff that's important, that kind of chemistry and that team stuff. So as Puff says, and again back to that concept, I mean, you can layer this stuff in if your players are ready, and as long as they are at that, from a development point of view, you're not sacrificing some of that fundamental stuff that is more important for them to get under 12s than ball screens. So there's plenty of time for that.
As long as all 5 are being developed, and more than 5, I mean, like at that age group in our system now, in 12s, 13s, 14s, we've got to play 10, 12 players, and that's another day's debate, which I agree with, but but there's other elements of it too. But I think we never know when there's going to be an injury. We never know when anything's going to happen. So I listened to Alan Keane a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he lost the season in August because he didn't develop everybody when his point guard went down in February. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was back in August when he didn't foresee. Yeah. So it's it could happen on 12 and 14, I guess, or they're going off playing a different sport or something like that, and they miss a game. So I guess that's the thing. So
yeah, just on that one. So in my experience, I took over coach 15 team with the Celtics is and you see that, and that's where under 12s for me is so young, and the difference as the years is massive. So under 12s, 13s, 4, that 2 year, just so much has happened in their development that I got a team that was fairly much rotated around a single player or 2 players, and then what you have to do is within 2 years now of under 14, 16s, that jump in is massive. You're trying to catch the rest of them up because you've just played 2 years under 13 and under 14 trying to win, and with that kind of mentality as a coach wanting to win, but you haven't equally developed the whole team, and that's a shame. That for me is a shame. A lot of people miss out or lose out because of that. So it's
you can do the development of individual players off the practice time of developing everybody else, I guess, in one respect too. So hey Trevor, good job coming in again for the 4th night in a row. Puff mentioned how important decision making is for a point guard. How would he recommend that players work to really improve this during this lockdown period with no practice partners and scrimmage games going on?
This is hard, man, and this is why I gave the document to send. So players need to watch as much basketball as you can, right?
Yep.
And so what we need to do as coaches is we need to tell our young players, all right, I want you to watch and see what this guard, for example, does when he drives into the lane. Like, what happens when the defense comes to him? What decision is he making? So the more and more you see that, the more and more when you go out onto the court, right? Once you start driving and you start seeing like, oh, I've seen this situation before. I've watched this 100 times. I've watched, you know what I mean? I've watched Kyle Lowry get in the lane 100 times. So now what am I going to do? Am I going to jump stop and shoot a little floater? Am I going to kick it to the shooter? Am I going to dump it down to the post? Like now, at least in my head, I have those options in my head just from watching it over and over and over.
Excellent. So with that in mind, I think we need one more. Oh yeah, Ben. I suppose going back is, can a team be successful without that point guard relationship with everybody and with coach?
Without the point guard relationship, I think it's always somebody. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be that point guard sometimes that takes that responsibility. Like Kevin Garnett was a point guard. He just happened to play power forward. You know what I mean? Like he was the heart and soul of those Celtics teams, and they happen to have a brilliant minded point guard in Rajon Rondo. You know what I mean? But Kevin Garnett was the one who Doc Rivers went through, and everything kind of went from Doc to Kevin to the team. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the point guard. And sometimes, you know, like the point guard is not going to be this outspoken guy who's going to give, you know, a rah-rah speech in the huddle, and you don't need to be that. You know what I mean? You just need to be somebody who's willing to communicate with your team on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that was actually something that came in a while ago, is how can you be successful with a introverted point guard that doesn't have that outwardly persona, but yet you still have, I mean, Kyle Hustle was that guy, wasn't he? Like he wasn't that.
100%. Still is.
He is that guy that person was talking about, wasn't he? Like introverted on the floor and just went away and just did his thing.
Yeah.
You know, and dominated during that 10 title period of what they got, you know. So yeah, definitely. So we're about to wrap up. A couple of quick things. Great job on the questions tonight. In the handout section, I've put a link with the access code to Huddle. I'll be putting up this evening session first thing in the morning along with presentations, but the 3 online clinics are on there, plus Erin's presentation is on there. Having an issue getting Kieran's one up there because the videos are on it, so I might need to get the videos off it and put the videos up separately on that sort of stuff. And then I'm still waiting on the presentations from last night as well, if they're willing to go up. So I'd like to thank Huddle, Avenir Sports, for giving us that platform for you guys to host. I'd like to thank GoToWebinar for providing a safe platform for us as well. So great job. We're averaging about 94 after tonight, 94 coaches per night right now. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's really great. So guys, tremendous presentations tonight. Love the interaction, how the questions came across. Where both positions were relevant to each other and stuff like that. So guys, tomorrow night we've got Sean Ingle on ball screen offense, and something that was common tonight and last night was the use of video, and we've got a top-notch guy in Kieran Toner. He's the Dublin football video coordinator, and he also did some stuff for Andy Gill with some Irish teams for a couple of years also. So I'm fired up for that one because I'm a big video guy, big video guy. So so guys, tune in. Great stuff. Finish the same way as we did every night. Do all the stuff the professionals are telling us. Stay home. Let's do our thing and let's get back on the floor pretty quickly. All right, guys. Thanks.
Wash your hands.
Wash those hands. All right, guys. See you tomorrow night.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.